One other thing that I come across quite often, and I don't know why it's been really predominant this year, is loose battery connections. Okay, keep up on those battery connections. That's going to cause you a lot of issues, especially with the newer bikes with the ECUs involved. If you're getting loose connections on those battery terminals, it can actually cause ECU failure just from that short in the system, and then you're looking at quite a bit of money on those. Some of these ECUs cost anywhere up to $1,000 on some of the replacements. So keep up on the battery terminals, make sure that you've got a good battery in there. Let's kind of talk about some other things kind of on the electrical part of it. There's a little product out there called dielectric grease. Okay, so people think that this is the solve-all to keeping everything waterproofed in the system. What the problem is when you put it into your plugs, it actually separates the electrical. It doesn't make a contact anymore. So dielectric grease is for sealing on the outer edges of the plug to where you're not getting water in it. It's not to pack in all those plug areas, because then you're definitely going to have a no-run issue on that. So just give you a little heads up on that. We've seen quite a few people bring their bikes in to where they thought that was going to make their machines invincible from water and taking them into deep sections of really nasty areas. So definitely don't want to pack all those plug-in areas with dielectric grease. Just seal the outer seal edges. If you want, you could even put maybe a little bit just on the edge here in the spark plug boot, just so it keeps some water from getting in there, but you're not changing the connection of that spark plug wire itself. Okay, even on your other electrical plugs, you can do that too, just to keep those sealed up. Let's see. So kind of back on your oil. Average oil change, usually you're looking at about every 5 to 10 hours, depending on the machine. Like I mentioned before, I change mine after every race weekend. Keep an eye on your oil. So air filters, oil, spark plug, those are the biggies right there that are going to give you issues. If you're not changing your oil, you're wiping out your transmission and the internals of the motor a lot quicker than they need to be. So if you keep on those, like I said, keep quality oil in that machine, that's going to last you a long time too as well. As far as the top end, like I mentioned, doing those compression tests, make sure that you're doing that on a regular basis, and that way you've got a good solid knowledge on what your compression is looking like. If it starts getting a little down on the compression, it's just time to rebuild that top end and get a new piston and rings in there and get it freshened back up on the cylinder as well. Okay. Let's see, trying to think of a couple other things. Obviously, we want to keep up on our coolant, make sure that's in good shape. If you are doing some slower trail riding, it is a good idea to maybe get an accessory fan for the machine. Heat kills engines, so if you can keep that heat down, you're going to be a lot better off, and just keep a lot more longevity in that engine as well. If you are doing some trail riding and you find your fan is coming on quite a bit when you're doing a lot of steep uphill riding, take the moment and pull over, let the bike cool down a little bit. That steep trail riding, it's going to put a lot of work on the engine without getting any airflow through the engine itself. So it's good chance to pull over, get some water in your system, get cooled down a little bit, let the engine relax a little bit, then you're good for the next little stint out there. Okay? If you don't have an hour meter on your machine, an hour meter basically wires right to the spark plug wire, and then somewhere on the system you can have a little hour meter. It's going to tell you how many hours are on that machine, and that way it's going to give you a little cleaner idea on how soon it is to get to that service interval to where you have to do a top end on that machine as well. So those definitely come in handy. I always feel like I'm kind of rolling in the dark if I don't have an hour meter. It's kind of a guess, and you just have to kind of hope for the best on what you've got with the information in front of you on figuring out how many hours are on that machine. You can get really expensive and buy bore scopes and have little cameras that look inside your pistons, those kind of things. Actually, there's some pretty affordable ones out nowadays that'll just plug into your cell phone. So they're kind of a neat little gadget. You can pull your spark plug out and stick the probe inside the spark plug hole and kind of peer around and look on your cell phone, and that'll actually give you a good picture view of what your cylinder walls are looking at, what your piston's looking at, and then you can kind of make some judgment calls from there on that system as well. You know, as far as coolant hoses, make sure that your coolant hoses are clamped up. Rubber does shrink after some time, so it's a good idea to put a snug on those coolant hoses, just give it a little snug. If you're starting to see any coolant come kind of seeping out of those, maybe it's time to pull that hose off, give it a little clean out around the edge, reconnect it, and then that should clear up that issue for you as well. Some other things that I do run across, especially kickstart machines. Your Kickstarter gets a lot of wear and tear on it, gets a lot of work back and forth. A lot of times these bolts will come loose as well. So if the bolt comes loose and you kickstart it, you're going to strip out the splines, and then you're going to end up into a deeper issue where you have to replace that kickstart spline. That's just going to cost you more money. So if we can go through the bike, give it a good snug up on everything occasionally, make sure everything's dialed up on that, and then we're pretty good to go, and then you're good for that adventure out there, out in the sand or the dirt, or maybe up in the mountains out there. Okay. You know, I know this one's kind of short and sweet, but that's kind of the gist on the two strokes. They're a pretty easy system to work on. As long as you've got a good clean spark plug, I would recommend keeping a spare spark plug with you. Keep it in your backpack or in your toolkit. That way, if you do happen to foul a plug out, you can swap that plug out, and then you're not going to be stranded out on the trail as well. So, yes, Jeff.
How can you tell when you have a foul spark plug?
Typically, you're going to have really boggy acceleration, or you'll even have a hard start or a no start at all. It won't even fire up for you. A lot of times when a plug gets fouled out, I usually see it when someone's doing some trail riding, lower RPMs, and they're not perking the bike up occasionally and getting those RPMs to zing up. They just kind of keep it in those lower RPMs to where it's not really burning that fuel out cleanly. So if you are doing some slower trail riding, maybe pull that clutch in every once in a while, give it a blip and clean that plug out a little bit. That way it's just not going to get fouled out on you as well. But
it's more important on this two-stroke to keep the RPM up to help prevent or minimize that.
Yeah, it's good to give them a blip every once in a while. Now, two strokes, they do like to trail ride, and you can keep the RPMs really low and just kind of slip that clutch all the way through those technical trail systems. But every once in a while, get that clutch pulled in, give it a good wring out, and just make sure that your plug's running clean, and that way it's not going to foul out of you in the process of that little adventure out there. Okay, let's see.
Well, yes. You mentioned about what do you call it for the muffler?
The silencer, or
silencer that you have to clean up. Mm-hmm. What are some of the signs that you look for that it's time for you to?
Usually those signs, you're going to see a lot of oil start dripping out of here, and that's actually a sign that you're running your mixture too fat on the oil as well. So if you're seeing a lot of oil just dumping out of here, you're probably running a little too heavy on your fuel mixture. But also your bike will just get louder and louder and louder the more you ride the bike. So once it starts getting obnoxious, it's time to pull that thing apart and give it a good clean out, replace the packing in it, and that way it's going to be happy for the next go around too. So it's not a clean job. You can obviously see how oily and residuey all this stuff is. So plan on getting a little dirty. So that's just kind of part of it. If you're riding a dirt bike, you better be getting dirty anyway. So that's part of the fun on these things.
So we can come into Ed's Motorsport and get these stuff, right?
Typically, yeah, we right now it's a really busy season for us. So we are kind of sticking to our brands that we typically work on. The KX was kind of a special case for us. So, but typically we're going to be working on the Suzuki's, the Husqvarnas, the KTM's. Articat is another one of our brands as well. So if you've got a local dealer that you know is working on those, and honestly it's going to make it a lot easier for that dealer to work on that machine. A lot of people don't realize that if we've got to order certain parts for that bike and it's an off-brand for us, we actually have to create part numbers, and it really extends the entire repair out. And sometimes we don't even have that information on specifications for the engines, those type of things. A lot of your local dealer that you know they work on that brand, if you're comfortable with them, get that relation developed with them, and then you can go in there, talk with them, roll into the back shop and say, hey, what's going on, so-and-so, and then they're going to be willing to work with you. And plus, when you go in and you're not a stranger and all the time, they recognize your face. Personally, I do quality jobs on everything, but if they're a good person, half the time you're going to get a little extra out of it too. So come in with a good attitude. I mean, we're not here to try to take money out of your pocket. We're here to get you on the road and go make memories out there. That's, yeah, we like to make a living, but that's our main drive, is we want to see you get out there and have a good time on it.
So we understand the KTM.
Yep, Suzuki, gas, yep. Yep, Suzuki as well. Okay. So yeah, you'll find a lot of local dealers that are like that, where they focus on certain brands, just because then they can keep their part supply stocked for those certain brands instead of having to kind of go a little south on what they're stocking in those systems. So, but like I said, find a good dealer that's gonna that you can develop a good rapport with. There's good and bad dealers out there, not gonna lie. So you'll find the bad ones, and you'll really appreciate the good ones out there too. So I'm kind of touching back on some of the basic maintenance things. Make sure your fluids are fresh in your hydraulic systems. You want to change those out once a year. We kind of talked about that in our last video there. So make sure everything's performing properly for you. Check your fork seals. A clean bike is a happy bike. That's how I look at it. So after you get done riding, take it for a bath, make sure it's clean. You're probably gonna find something that maybe you did a little damage to out on the trail, and that's gonna give you a little heads up on it, and then you can actually address that before your last minute situation going, man, I've got a vacation ride coming up tomorrow and I've got this broken and it's back ordered because of our supply issues that are going on nowadays. So if you can catch it early, it's gonna make your life a lot simpler on that. Good deal. That work out pretty good? Awesome. Good deal. Well, gang, I think that about covers it on this one. I know it's a little shorter and sweeter on this one, but like I said, the two strokes they're a pretty simple machine. The biggies are fresh spark plug, keep a spare spark plug with you, keep your air filters clean, make sure your mufflers, your silencers clean. So it's a good idea to take that off every once in a while. Make sure that there's no fluids rolling around in it. And check your manufacturer for your silencers. See when the repack interval is on that. If your silencer is obnoxiously loud, it's probably time to repack that little guy as well. So definitely helps out for a lot more enjoyable ride as well. Probably won't piss off the neighbors when you come screaming by them, and at full tilt, that muffler will be a little quieter too. Plus, a lot of machines, they do like a little bit of back pressure developed in the silencer. So if it's an open straight pipe system, they tend to run a little funky unless it's actually set up for that. So that'll definitely help out with the performance of that system as well. Well, gang, I think that about covers it on our little two-stroke intro here. I hope that helps out. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to get on the site and throw your questions and comments out. We always appreciate them, and look forward to on the next video we do. All right, take care now.